The Constitution begins with three powerful words: we the people. But here's the uncomfortable truth: most people were nowhere near the room. And once you understand who was excluded, you understand why America still struggles with democracy today. Welcome to the Max Clark Show. And welcome to the People's Civics Project, understanding power, law, and democracy from the Constitution to the world. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 2: Who Wrote the Constitution and Who Didn't Matter. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. I am not a lawyer. Nothing on this show is legal advice. This is civic education for the people. Last episode, we established something important. The Constitution wasn't a miracle. It was a compromise written during fear, instability, and elite panic. Today, we're going to dig deeper, because to understand what a system does, you have to understand who designed it and who they didn't consider worth consulting. The Constitution reflects the worldview of the people who wrote it. And those people were not representative of the nation. They were representative of power. Sounds familiar? Let's talk about the delegates at the Constitutional Convention. They were almost all white, all male, all wealthy, all educated, all property owners. Many were lawyers, many were merchants, and many were enslavers. These were men with something to lose. This wasn't a cross section of America. This was America's board of directors. At that particular time, voting rights were tied to property ownership. Political legitimacy came from wealth and not humanity. So when the founders talked about the people, they didn't mean everyone. They meant people like them. From day one, American democracy was filtered through class. Now let's talk about who wasn't in the room. Women, excluded entirely. Enslaved Black people, treated as property, not as citizens. Free Black people, ignored. Indigenous nations, erased. Poor white men, politically disposable. Not because they forgot, but because inclusion would have shifted power. Rings true today. You don't accidentally exclude entire populations. You design exclusion. Slavery wasn't a side issue at the convention. It was central. The delegates argued fiercely about how enslaved people would be counted, not as humans, but as political leverage. That's how we get the 3/5 compromise. Enslaved people had no rights, no vote, no freedom, but enslavers were allowed to count them partially to gain more power in Congress. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the definition of structural injustice. Black bodies increased white political power, while Black voices were silenced completely. The Constitution also included the Fugitive Slave Clause, protection for the slave trade for another 20 years, silence on abolition. This wasn't neutrality, it was protection. Slavery wasn't an unfortunate oversight, it was a negotiated feature. Let's talk about the Electoral College, because it connects directly to exclusion. You see, Southern states wanted power without giving enslaved people rights. The Electoral College and 3/5 compromise worked together. More enslaved people meant more political power for enslavers. It's easy math. The Electoral College wasn't built to protect democracy. Understand this. The Electoral College wasn't built to protect democracy. It was built to manage inequality. So why say we the people? Why say that at all? Because it sounds democratic, it creates legitimacy, but legitimacy doesn't equal inclusion. It's like selling a product with great marketing but terrible fine print. When politicians say, this is what the founders wanted, they're usually telling on themselves, because the founders wanted stability, property protection, and elite control. Equality had to be demanded later by people who weren't considered full citizens. The Constitution didn't create democracy, it delayed it. But here's the part that matters most. The story doesn't end in 1787. The people who were excluded didn't accept exclusion quietly. They organized, they resisted, they forced change. Every expansion of freedom, 13th Amendment, 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment, women's suffrage, civil rights, came after the Constitution. You see, American democracy didn't start complete. It started unfinished. And the fight to finish it is the story of this country. In the next episode, we break down how the Constitution actually works, not the cartoon version you learned in school. So if this episode gave you language for something you've always felt, share it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, tell a friend. Because civic education spreads when the people teach each other. Love somebody, but more importantly, love yourself. Think while it's still legal. And remember, what they'll do to the least of us, they'll do to the rest of us. The Max Clark Show.